welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here. And today we're going to be looking at the 2020 presidential election and going through my prediction and going and filling the states based on their margins, and I'm going to give you guys some reasoning for these calls. So let's get started by filling our safe Democratic states. So at this point in time, the Democratic safe states are pretty solid. I mean, the Democrats, they're not risking too many losses from their safe column and making them competitive. Because remember, although it might not be a big deal because you're essentially going to win them, if they're just coming out a little bit closer in the margins, that's going to be a problem for you economically. Remember that these campaigns, they run off of money. And when a race becomes competitive, that's a lot more money you're going to have to spend. So, I mean, that's a good thing for the Democrats. Now, the Republicans, they have problems right now. They're running with a couple problems. I would say, first of all, is the tweeting and Donald Trump's, mouth. I mean, he's been talking so much, and I think if Donald Trump is a little bit, he lowers his profile a little bit, he stops tweeting, 15 times an hour, maybe the Republican Party could just get a little bit better in the polls, and especially with Donald Trump. And I think, honestly, the Republican Party's kind of unpopularity is essentially just because of Trump. Now, does that mean that Donald Trump has no chance at winning the presidency? No. Because nonetheless, even though he might be so unpopular, he still does have a chance at the presidency. So, we're going to fill in this map and going from states that, through the likely states all the way down to the tilt states, which will be the closest states in the election. So, let's start with the likely states with the Democratic Party. At this point in time, they have a stronghold on some competitive states. Some won't consider them swing states, and I wouldn't call them swing states, they're just competitive. So, Nevada, Colorado, I would say New Hampshire, I would say Minnesota, and the state of Virginia. These states have been solid. Oh, and I forgot the state of Michigan, I think that's it. These states have all been pretty solid for the Democrats. We've had constant growth in House districts. We have very constant election of Democratic officials. And the polling numbers show that the Joe Biden will probably win here by anywhere from around 5 to 10%. So I honestly feel like, for example, these states are in the likely column for the Democrats for different reasons. For example, you have a state like Nevada, which is mostly because of the Latinos. And, I mean, Donald Trump is gaining some support among some Latinos and about some support among some African Americans. So, that might be affected, and that might affect the vote totals. It's just a thing that people don't talk about. But, I mean, I've seen countless of accounts and things like that. And when I was researching for this video, there's actually a lot more support for Donald Trump than people may think. I'm going to make that into his own video because actually that deserves its own video. But I feel like at this point, these states are solid because of the demographics and just how democratic it's been leading. Nevada, because of the Latinos. Colorado and Virginia, because of the suburbs. Michigan and Minnesota, the Rust Belt voter. And New Hampshire, it's a weird mix of kind of all types of voters there. So, I think all of this is helping the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, going out and winning in these states. At this point in time, Donald Trump has a big issue. He is losing grasp of some of these states. And, I mean, right now, the Republican Party should not be worrying about Nevada, Colorado, and Virginia because those are the last of their priorities right now. They should be focusing on the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt. Look, at this point, the Republican Party is at a point where they're going to have to give it all to win a couple states, let it be a narrow victory. Because at this point, they're kind of far behind, and Donald Trump and his campaign, they're going to have to come up with a strategy, which they're trying to, and we're going to see in the next couple of months if it succeeds. So those are our likely Democratic states. Let's go on to our Republican likely states. So at this point in time, there's a couple. I would say Alaska would be in the likely Republican column, and I would actually put these two districts. So I honestly feel that Alaska might be in the likely column for the Republican Party, just for the fact that this state is actually more liberal than people may think. Don't count the Democrats out in Alaska. They've had very good Democratic candidates run and almost win, and compared to a somewhat popular incumbent. So, I'm going to give you an example. So, here in Alaska, we had a pretty contested Senate race in 2018. We have a pretty contested Senate race in 2020 as well. But I mean, this state, the reason why it sometimes gets close is because this state has so many third party votes. And honestly, um, since most of the third parties just aligned with the Democrats, since they're trying to beat Donald Trump, that's some of the mentality. And considering that Donald Trump is not as popular in Alaska, that also doesn't help him. But I think he'll still win here by a couple points. And the two congressional districts, these are districts in the two states that allocate their electoral votes by congressional district. So these two districts, they're just very conservative districts with some progressive bases. So what do I mean by this? Since we don't have a progressive candidate on the ticket, I mean, as of right now, because we don't know who the VP is going to be, and the chances of having a super progressive VP pick are very low. At this point in time, these districts are both super conservative, and they also have very big liberal bases. But considering the liberal base only goes out to vote when a liberal candidate's on the ticket, then I mean these districts are not that in play for the Democrats. So while someone like a Biden could have some appeal to those voters, Donald Trump has more, especially like in Nebraska and in Maine's in like upper part of the state of Maine. And yeah, honestly, these districts are overhyped for the Democrats in my opinion. And yeah, some polling shows Biden ahead, but like right now, it's so complicated because we don't know if to trust the polls or how to analyze them, because there's people that are not they're not seeing who they're voting for. There it's just a little flawed. So I'm just going to say that if we not I don't base my predictions off of polling, because if I did, that's a little bit that's not good analytically, because then you're just giving false hopes to some people. I feel like polls are not wrong essentially, but they're not always right. So I feel like these states are a little bit overestimated for Biden. So I think Donald Trump can win here around 5 to 6 points. So those are our likely states or districts for the Republican Party. Let's go on to our lean states for the Democrats. So essentially, Democrats have a very solid hold on some states. Arizona in the Southwest, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania in the Midwest, and I think at this point that's pretty much it. The Democrats have these strongholds, I mean, and they're gaining a lot of power and a lot of voters in these states. Arizona used to be a very conservative state, well, and it still essentially is. Arizona is flipping blue, not because of the candidate, and it essentially is because of the candidate, but it's because how moderate they are. If you notice, I mean, who are the candidates, especially the Republicans, that excel in Arizona? John McCain was from Arizona, so, I mean, he's a moderate. Mitt Romney's a moderate, or establishment. I mean, most of the Republican establishment, for the most part, it's pretty moderate when it comes to today's political system. And the Republicans that do very well in states like Arizona are the moderate ones. And in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, the Democrats are gaining support amongst the working class. But I'm honestly a little skeptical about this area. Yeah, as of right now, I would be comfortable putting it in the lean margin 3 to 5%. But then you also must realize that these voters are voters that deeply care about the economy. Yeah, COVID-19 might be a thing for a lot of voters, but that's mostly in the Sun Belt. So, focusing on the Rust Belt, voters really like to focus on the economy. And if you've seen like the economic movement, I mean, from I guess Trump inauguration to now, it's growing rapidly. Some people say that's because of Obama. That's a discussion for another day. But still, the economy has been growing, and the blow of COVID-19 was a big blow to some of these areas. Nonetheless, I think the Democrats have a strong hold here. But I mean, it would be a state to look out for. So now let's go on and fill in our Republican lean states. So as of right now, there's a couple. So I would say Texas at this point is in the lean column. Georgia's in the lean column. I would say that at this point, Ohio and Iowa will also be in the lean column. So these states, I don't really get when people say these are going blue, definitely, because these states are super conservative at their bases. And essentially, what really helps, essentially the VP candidate might matter in some of these states like Georgia or Ohio. But essentially, other than that, I mean, the Republican base is very strong in these areas. And again, what have we learned from past elections? Republicans go out to vote more than the Democrats. So look, Democrats might have a larger base in a lot of these states, which they're growing. But if only half of them go and vote, it's like if you had only half as big as a base. So I mean, these states, while they are trending Democratic, there's no way to say that to deny that these states are heavily trending Democratic, especially when it comes to Texas and Georgia. But Ohio and Iowa, they're actually turning a little bit more red. But it's not to a point right now where I don't think it's flippable. I think the most flippable of these states is Ohio and Iowa, then Georgia. Texas is the more far-fetched. The thing with Texas is that they're going to have to get so much support and campaign and invest a lot of resources there. Yeah, I mean, they could do that because that's certainly important to invest your resources well. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the Democratic Party does not, I don't think they have enough resources to beat out Texas at this moment. 2022 could bring them some good things in the state of Texas. There's no Senate race, but I think there is a governor's race. That's the thing they should look out for. And there's many different things for the Democrats in the future in Texas, but I think it wouldn't be smart to invest into it right now. And I think this is just a game of how campaigns will invoke their strategies. At this point, I think this race will definitely be decided by how good campaigns can strategize. So, what areas are they targeting, and if that area is actually pretty good for them. So, I mean, the Republican Party's, their strategy, like what I've noticed, is they're just trying to hold on to the states they have. So, I mean, that's a smart strategy because then you don't have to, like, gain more. So, well, the Democrats, they have to gain some states. But surprisingly, they're not focusing too much on the Rust Belt. They're focusing a lot more on the Sun Belt, which, I mean, that's a good play for the future. But that might end up hurting them the same way it did in 2016. So those are our lean states for the Republican Party. Some states to watch out. I feel like the states in the lean column in all parties, those states should be considered the states that people should look out for to become closer as we get closer to election day. Now, going on to our tilt states. So these will be the closest state, in my opinion, in the 2020 presidential election: North Carolina and Florida. So I honestly feel like Donald Trump has a good chance of winning in both of these places, more than he's perceived to. I mean, a lot of people say that he has no chance at winning North Carolina or Florida. I would say Florida is kind of a little bit getting further out from being likely for Trump, just for the fact that the governor, Ron DeSantis, is becoming super unpopular because of COVID-19. So, where does COVID-19 matter? Well, in these areas, Florida and North Carolina, because that's the Sun Belt, the area that has been more hard hit. That's going to be a big issue. So, in the state of Florida, I mean, Donald Trump was leading, I would say, for a very long time. I mean, he was consistently leading since, I mean, we could say when they started polling and doing all these different things. And honestly, he had strong support amongst Latinos in the state of Florida. Very strong support amongst suburbs in Florida, which is one of the areas that very few of the suburbs have flipped. And that is one good thing for the Republican Party, because this state is becoming more and more reliably Republican. Now, when it comes to this election, I think Joe Biden has a very good chance of winning here. And I think what would put the icing on the cake for Joe Biden would be picking a Latina VP. At this point, I think that although the African American community is a smart move in some areas, the Democratic Party is struggling with Latinos. They're losing support amongst Latinos. And you have very big amounts of Latino voters flipping. You also have a big amount of, not a big amount, obviously, you have some African American voters flipping. And I mean, those are two key groups that the Democrats must hold on to. Because as soon as they start losing them, they could say goodbye, or not goodbye to having a reliably long period of ruling. So, Florida at this point, just because of Ron DeSantis' popularity, and yeah. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention. So, there was a change the other day. So, for a long time, people thought this state was going to go, Florida was going to go by a lot more, due to the fact of the convicted felons. Now they've, the Supreme Court, I think it was, they had said something about, like, they had to pay, like, the court fines or the it was something about their legal fees or something like that before they were able to register to vote. So considering that, I don't know if I haven't looked at the statistics specifically, but that could be a considerable chunk of voters that could be eliminated because they haven't like paid their legal fees or something like that. So something watch out. We might see that development in the future. Now, last thing, North Carolina. I honestly feel I have a good feeling that Donald Trump's already gonna win here, and I honestly feel like this state is going to go to Donald Trump just because of the fact that he has a large base in the state. He has a very reliable amount of voters, especially in the country, and he's growing amongst the suburbs of North Carolina. And he's growing with the African American community. That's not to say that Democrats won't take the African American community by storm, because they will. But I mean, I've seen many occasions where many African Americans they stand with Donald Trump's policies and flip. I remember one of my viewers. I remember that they had put in the comments. I forget which was the video. If I can find the comment, I'll put it in my next election day video. But he said that he was African American and he's flipping in 2020. So I don't know if that's just a one thing scenario, but I think it's a very big thing. And a couple of pundits have said that the African American support is actually shifting a little bit towards Trump, although for the most part it's still going to be reliably for the Democrats. So I mean, putting all those things together, I think Donald Trump has a pretty decent chance of winning in North Carolina. And I feel like, honestly, right now, Joe Biden's chances of the presidency are definitely being overestimated. I think that, honestly, Donald Trump is a politician who's able to pull off a lot of different things. And considering the fact that he won in 2016 pretty much out of nowhere, because, yeah, the election wasn't supposed to be that close or even in Donald Trump's favor. So, I mean, anything is possible at this point, and I think we shouldn't count him out. Yeah, Joe Biden is leading by somewhat big margins, but remember, Hillary Clinton was also leading by somewhat big margins, and where did that get us? And I don't know, it's my gut feeling, I'm not unbiased and everything, my gut feeling that Donald Trump will try to do something and will get closer to the presidency. We'll get there, will he get there ultimately? I don't know yet, but, I mean, looking at an unbiased point of view, I just see Donald Trump's campaign as a little bit more able to capture the working class voter. And I think that's one thing that, as of right now, we haven't seen, but I think that's something that will happen in the future. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please give it a huge thumbs up, like and subscribe, and turn on post notifications to get notified when I post my next video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye!